All right, folks. Just bringing you some info about the Michigan Kart Club. There's the email I received. I think everybody kind of got the same one, but I'll read it to you. Careful review of current 2019 road race schedules and MIS track rental date offerings show us there are no opportunities for a race that doesn't conflict with a holiday weekend or other 2019 road race date. Other Michigan road race opportunities have been explored and are not possible. Due to the decreasing attendance and rising costs, there will be no road race karting events hosted by the Michigan Kart Club at the Michigan International Speedway in 2019. As a result, after over 50 years of hosting road race karting events in Michigan, we at MKC have decided to disband the club and liquidate its assets. So, here's the bad news. Why am I bringing you a video about this? Well, my family was involved in the early days of the club. I mean, I was just a little guy, man. I was born in '65. So, the stuff I'm going to read you here, I'm only like 3 years old when this stuff gets started. So, I'm obviously not a karter by any means at that point, but pretty cool unloading the boxes and getting into stuff in the garage about those VHS tapes and looking into doing more of that stuff. Run me across the stuff I found. My mom was on and off at times the secretary of the Michigan Kart Club back in the early days. And so down in our basement at her house, when she passed, we had to clean up her house and sell it. There was a desk. The desk was full of nothing but MKC stuff. And later on in the years, you know, when I'm married and moved out and what have you, I'd come to visit Mom once or twice a week. And we talked about the old days a lot. You know, we even took Mom to the racetrack with us once up at Grattan. Later on in the day, later on in these days, I think we were still on some clutch carts back then. But in the desk down there, and what I found in a box was the original bylaws to the club and the constitution of the club. These are photocopies of an old, remember the old Ditto machine where you had to put the and then turn it with the, yeah, exactly. That's what they were originally done on. Well, what I found here is this typing paper. You see the paper clip is all rusty. These are a nice rust mark there. The staples are rust. Staples on these papers over here are rusty. But what I want to do is I want to read you what this ends up being. These 2 pages. It's 2 copies. One's the original, I think, original draft, which is the first one, and then the second one is an exact duplicate, but it's got some little notes written in it. So I'm going to read you this original copy, okay? And remembering that 2018 was the last race at Michigan International Speedway for the Michigan Kart Club. So here we go. It says, the very earliest gathering of the original group of karters, later to be known as the Michigan Kart Club, was held in the back room of a kart shop in a small town north of Detroit in 1968. I believe this kart shop, there were a lot of go-kart shops back in the 60s and 70s, man, all over around here. But this particular shop, I think, is Gene's Karts and Parts, because although Gene's shop was on 8 Mile, which is the border, the northern border of Detroit, he was on the north side of the boulevard. And his address, and you'll see in some of the stuff on Facebook, Trish Willie put up a T-shirt, Gene's Karts and Parts T-shirt that used to be her dad Pat's, you know, and it says Hazel Park, Michigan. Well, Hazel Park was the 2 miles north of 8 Mile, from 8 Mile to 10 Mile, 2 miles tall and about 1.25 miles wide. So small town north of Detroit would work. If you go to I use DuckDuckGo, but go to Google or Yahoo, whatever, type in Hazel Park, Michigan, and it'll give you an outline. It's a tiny little place. So somebody, and I'm not sure who wrote this. It might have been Pat himself. It might have been my dad. Could have been, I don't know, but my mom probably typed it. Could very well have been Pat. Pat wrote the newsletter and stuff. You know, he did a lot of work with the newsletter earlier on, and we'll get into the newsletter, the Michigan Kart Club newsletter later. But I personally have one of the originals, but I'll just tell you about it now. It was originally called the Formula TC Lowdown, and it took me a while to remember what that was all about. Formula TC is Formula 2 cycle. Back in the 60s, they used crazy words to explain things in karting. And as you'll see when whoever is writing this speaks about the racetrack that's being built. So let's move on. The kart club, the first meeting was held in the back room of the kart shop in a small town north of Detroit in 1968. This small group had a desire to do something about enduro racing in Michigan. They called it enduro racing. Okay? Meetings were held at various places with not much being accomplished. Then our inspiration grew when news of a new racing plant, racetrack, there's the terminology again, racing plant, was to be built in Michigan. The Michigan Kart Club Incorporated was formed so that we could sponsor enduro karting events at this track. So the Michigan Kart Club was formed out of motivation to do enduro racing, but because this new track was being built. Okay. It says, but we began to trip over stumbling blocks. Management problems at MIS was the largest issue they were dealing with. So it says the largest management problems at MIS was the largest stumbling block. So MIS is this racing plant that was being built, that the club got started, formed in wanting to put races on it. So let's go down to the next paragraph. It says, but now we had a bona fide club with almost 60 members. We had to race somewhere, it says. Someone heard that the Grand Valley Kart Club in Grand Rapids, Michigan, was about to disband. Interesting, huh? This was the club that sponsored races at Grattan. A short, 2 miles, in parentheses, extremely challenging course. Short course. I love this, man. This is great stuff. It says, we worked hard all winter in 68 and the spring of 69 and received a sanction from IKF for the first race in our division at Grattan. It's hard to imagine an untried organization attempting something of this sort. Now imagine, this is a group that might have got some help from this old Grand Valley. You know, the Grand Valley did a race or whatever, or something at Grattan, so they had a little bit. So here comes this new group with an IKF sanction, right? It says, you can guess how terrified we all were when 323 karters showed up on Saturday morning. But since that first Saturday, we have run events with the same kind of success for 2 years at Grattan. Each race taught us something new, and we learned. So this first race is, they worked through 68 and 69. This has got to be 1969 when they put on their first race at Grattan. And if it says 2 years later, it's got to be, this is 71 when this thing's being written, I guess, right? Do the math. Leave me a comment below if you guys are seeing something here that I'm not. But it says each race taught us something new, and we learned. In the spring of 1970, our club was contacted by the IKF governor from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He asked if we would help a small group of karters in the Ontario area to organize a club and co-sponsor a race at Mosport Park. Man, I've been up there a bunch of times as a kid. Mosport was super cool. This is a world-famous track, it says, which hosts both Grand Prix and Can-Am events. stapled together. There's nothing on the back, so we're going to go right to page 2 here. Through our joint efforts, a sanctioned race, joint effort between this new Michigan Kart Club, right, who's all brash and full of themselves. They're going to co-sponsor a race with a bunch of nobodies up in Toronto who want to start their own club. You see how quickly they got full of themselves? Hey, man, let's finish. Okay, so through our joint efforts, a sanctioned race was held on Labor Day weekend of 1970. This is at Mosport. The OERC, Ontario Enduro Racing Club, applied for and received a sanction for the divisional race in Division 3 in June 71. So this must be their after they ran the race in 70, they got another gig in 71, and they were going to run it on their own after they established themselves, this enduro karting group. So here we go. The Michigan Kart Club feels that we had a hand in helping this fine group of karters get started. But all this time, we never gave up on MIS. Yeah, I thought you were going to wonder. It's an MIS video, right? Where are we going with this, Robert? Well, check it out. The winter season of 1970, things began to look up. With a little help, we arranged a meeting with the manager of American Raceways, which was obviously the promoter or proprietor of MIS. We couldn't believe it. We had a date. After 3 years, we did it. On September 11th and 12th, 1971, we passed 397 entrants through our registration at Michigan International Speedway. We feel it was a total success. Folks, I can tell you, as a little kid, and I don't remember know if it was the first race, 71, the poster I got in the garage for MIS 1972, or if it had gone maybe a different one, maybe there was more than one race, 71, 72, I don't know, but I remember being a kid where they did, maybe it was IRP and not MIS. I remember going to we were at a Holiday Inn, and they actually did registration and tech at a Holiday Inn parking lot and outside, nowhere near whatever racetrack we were at. And these go-karts were lined up all the way around the hotel where people were, the Hartmans were there with like 8 go-karts all lined up, brand new Hartmans. They came from California. So I'm pretty sure, I don't think it was IRP, I think it was MIS when they had a national there. But again, get in the description or in the comments below and put me in my place. Let me know if anybody else remembers that Holiday Inn registration and tech, people offloading go-karts, pushing them around at a hotel. That was awesome. That's when, back in the day, when things were sweet and cool. But here we go. I don't want to keep the video too long, but they did their gig on the 11th and 12th of September 1971. 397 entrants, man. That's a big deal in 2 days, right? With like what? What did they have? 12 classes, 18 classes maybe? After our September race at MIS, we staged our last event of the year at Grattan. Look at these guys. 2-3 years into their existence, they're already putting on multiple races at multiple tracks, right? Not being satisfied with opening a new track to karters in the Midwest, we decided to run our last race of the year on a very familiar track in the opposite direction. So they ran Grattan backwards. All right, yeah, look, who are these? Who is this go-kart club? Who are these guys? Jumping right into something like that, crazy. It says here, this opened up a whole new ball game. And did we have a ball? The entries were down a little. They had 190, it says in parentheses. But we blame this on a highly unpredictable weather in Michigan in October. And we can all attest to that. Even today, that hasn't changed all that much. So it says we feel we have more knowledge and experience in race organization than any other club in the Midwest other than the outstanding Indy Kart Club. We hope you feel the same way. Can you believe that? So they're in their 3rd year and they already think they're the cat's meow. You know what I mean? Crazy, crazy. I'll tell you, I remember a whole bunch of things from back in those days. And to bring up some points of some things I read on Facebook. See, I don't do social media. I actually think social media is evil. But whatever. I read something the other day that was a little disturbing. Some fella from the Midwest was saying that today's modern road racing, everybody has these conversations. What's wrong with road race karting? How can we save it? What do we need to do? I won't get into that. What I want to talk to you about real quick before we end this video is what this guy had to say. He said laydown karts aren't needed for road racing to continue or to make a bounce back or a comeback. And some guys got into the whole, sprint karts only came to road racing to help out pay the bills, and now there's more sprint classes than enduros. I mean, look at Dave Larson's gig. It's all sprint karts. All the classes are for sit-up karts, pretty much. The point I wanted to make, and I'll show you one of these days when we get these 8mm no sound movies put on a tape somehow and be able to get them to YouTube for you. You will see that first race that they put on at Grattan with the 300 and some odd entries the first time, the 323, their very first race where they were terrified. 99% of the karts that showed up there were sprint karts because they didn't make enduro karts yet. They were sit-uppity chassis where guys were putting tanks on the sides, or karts, they just started building them with the tanks on the side. The seat back was adjustable where you could unbolt and lean it down. And what happened was everybody showed up in the 60s with these sit-uppity type karts that started and evolved from a sprint track to a road race track. And somebody leaned the seat back. And maybe he ran good and blew up. Maybe he won a race. But it was obvious right from the get-go when the seat backs started getting leaned back that you were going to have to lay down. You were going to have to get aerodynamic if you were going to be competitive. And road race karts and karting itself on road race tracks evolved into a lay-down, preferably lay-down kart is the way you want it to go. So for somebody to say we don't need lay-down karts to continue road racing, I say open up the rules for those sprint karts. Allow the sprint shifter kart guys, don't give them all those rules. Don't give them all those sprint track rules so they can cross over back and forth. That's why guys started building their own karts. That's why people have stopped building karts, because the rules poo-poo it. You got to have your seat on your kart straight up and down. It's got to measure this high. Let them lean them back as far as they want on a road racing track. Let the guy do the extra work if he wants to. If they're not going to come from a sprint track because some guy can lean his seat back and go faster, and they're too lazy to do it themselves, that's what road race karting was all about, folks. We have kart tracks that race sprint karts on. The road circuit, or circuit racing, like they call it in England, is for road, car, motorcycle tracks, long tracks of long distance. And road racing is the circuit. It's not the vehicle. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we've seen how road racing grew into the big behemoth that it was. People came from short kart tracks or street racing with sit-uppity karts, and to be competitive, they ended up having to tilt their seats back. And they still had their knees in the air with them all the way back. We got video of that too. Eventually, they straightened their legs out, made the kart longer, and it became what predated what I drive now, which is a full-bodied lay-down kart. But you get the idea. You smell what I'm cooking. Did the Michigan Kart Club of late, that is now defunct and disbanding, did they do it right? I'm going to show you in this 1991 video I'm going to put back up and show you Saturday morning practice. The opening of Saturday morning practice. Not even enduro practice. I think they were still broke down by speed, because I think there were a lot of Yamaha laydowns that weren't involved in this practice session. I videotaped my brother Kenny, and then eventually my buddy Jim throws his kart out there too. And the absolute amount of traffic is just sick, ridiculous how many karts there were. And they were all laydowns, every one of them. So, did the Michigan Kart Club of late, did they do it right? You darn right they did. The evidence speaks to 50 years. Now, were these guys the ones? I'm not sure that any of them were around. I know Ron Taylor is around at the end. His dad, Dave, was involved in this group. Ron might have been a young buck. He might have been old enough to be a karter. Maybe he was older than me. I was only 3. Was Bill around then? Probably not. But the heritage was there. The brashness was there. We can do anything. We can teach other clubs how to do it. We can be the best at the timing, the scoring, the registration, the tech. A lot of what they did well was implemented here, and they fine-tuned it. So back in the days of the Mid-State Enduro Series where Michigan Kart Club and Dart Kart got together, there was nothing better than that series of races between those two clubs. I don't care what anybody's got to say. Nothing better. Anybody that ran that series will state the same thing. So to the guys and ladies and volunteers that stuck it out right to the end, thank you very much. We're going to miss going to MIS. And I called Bill and I told him this, I didn't really appreciate what you guys were doing, even though we bumped heads and disagreed a while back. I've changed, things have changed, times have changed. Been doing these track day things that I do got me put on the other side of the fence, and I got to see, the organizational side of it and how much work it is and how much planning goes into it and the headache and angst that goes into it. So for Bill and Ron and their families and the people that volunteered there the last few years, might not have been great big numbers at MIS from 2012 on to 2018, but we appreciate what you did and bringing us back as a club back to where it all started when the track got built in 1968. So, thanks guys, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. It's heartbreaking to see this email, but it is what it is. We'll talk to y'all later. More coming. God bless.